Hello everyone and welcome to Sci-Fi Zone, where we celebrate science fiction movies and TV shows from the past, the present and the future. I'm here today with Claire and MPS, and we're coming to you from the wonderful comic book store of Alternate Worlds. This place is so cool, it's actually raining outside at the moment. So I don't know if you can hear that, but there is actually drops of happiness dropping on us right now. Now, from our last episode, we actually got some feedback as to what people actually thought of it. And two people actually on YouTube marked us with a thumbs down. I actually heard a rumour that one of those may have been the producer of this show. What a scurvy dog. I tell you what, the other thing too, apparently we actually have, well, so the rumours say, a drinking game named after us. How good is that? In fact, you take a swig whenever I say, how good is that? And you take two swigs whenever Claire says that she loves time travel. How good is that? Oh, better take a drink, what can I say? Now, when we do an episode based around time travel movies, whoever's watching that and playing the drinking game is going to get a little bit tickled, I think. So keep your eyes open for that one. Anyway, we've got a very big show today. Lots of things, a lot of exciting things to talk about, rather. And I'm going to kick it off with Claire. Claire, what have you got for us?
Well, I want to talk about a show called Star Trek Picard. And we don't know a whole lot about it yet, but there's a trailer out that's actually really interesting. Lots of kind of teasing little bits of information. I'm kind of excited, but it's interesting that it's a Star Trek show based on one particular character. So it's based around Picard, as opposed to a whole ship, which is the usual pattern. So I don't know, what do you think of the idea?
Look, I think it's going to be interesting hearing rumours of who's actually going to be on there later on, and again, who's going to direct the series. You know, there are some names who have directed Star Trek who are going to go and redirect Picard, so, or Pilchard as we like to call
Good
him.
old Pilchard. So I was going to say that. Good old Pilchard, that was the name he used to have. In fact, we once knew a guy who actually wore a pink Next Generation costume, and he actually called himself Jean-Luc Picnic. So there you go. Have a drink.
It'll be interesting because you see on the trailer he's at his winery, which must be his brother's winery.
Yeah, it's the family winery.
Family winery.
Yeah.
So, and you see that it's got his own bottles, Chateau Picard.
Chateau Dulé Picard, is that how it goes? It's a nice drop, I've heard a rumour. Yep. So are you surprised that they're doing this show like now, like such a long time after, say, Next Generation in the movies?
Well, I think it's because of Patrick Stewart. He's such an interesting person, and he's become, mostly because of his Star Trek fame, he's become a personality in his own right. I mean, he's one of these people who is, I guess, Facebook famous. You know, his tweets and his Facebook posts are really, really popular. He's popular as a person, and I think that's why we've got it. I think that's why it's happening. And there's a time limit on Patrick Stewart, and I don't think anyone else could do Picard.
Hands up if you think there should be a show like with Kirk. It's a bit late now, they'd have to recast him, but a Kirk show or a Janeway show or an Archer show. Surely the other captains need a look in as well, but no, seriously. I think the idea of a Picard show actually has a lot of potential for it, and should work out quite well.
I think one of the reasons that Picard is, I don't think we want a Kirk show. I think Kirk is a little bit outdated. And I think one of the reasons we're getting a Picard show is because the Picard character is his own individual character. Kirk was more of a sort of an archetype. He was the typical, brash sci-fi captain, whereas Picard was...
I think a Kirk show, a different coloured lady every week, a pink one, a grey one, a purple one, a brown one.
That's a lot of galaxies to cover, that could take a while.
There's a spectrum to go through. Anyway,
it's a 5-year mission in itself.
Yeah, it would be.
Oh, golly. No, that's really interesting. So, and we don't really know much about it. Apparently there's a trailer for it out there at the moment.
There is, yes.
It will be set up on Amazon Prime, which is not what everyone else expects. Everyone expects it to be on Netflix, but because that's where Discovery is.
Yeah.
But for those who've got Amazon Prime, and luckily I do, I'll be able to watch it. So I guess everyone will be coming to my house to watch it.
That's right. So if you're watching this episode right now and thinking, I'd love to see good old Picard, we're off to MPS's. How good is that? Take
Details of my address is on the bottom of the screen.
Dear, absolutely fantastic. So that's actually quite good that they're doing it, and good luck to them too. And like a lot of things, people will be very, very keen to see the first episode and take an assessment from there as to how it's all going. So, are the characters from the previous TV series making an appearance? Do you know?
I've heard rumours that Riker's going to make an appearance. I can't remember who else, but there's one other that I think is making an appearance, and that's about it. At this stage. There's only 10 episodes scheduled, so we don't know too much more about that. The trailer is very fluffy in terms of there's not a lot there.
It's light.
Not a lot of substance sort of thing.
But it drops a few hints. I mean, clearly it's after he's not a captain anymore. He's not even an admiral anymore. He's gone beyond that because they refer to him as admiral and talk about why did you leave Starfleet. So there are a few little interesting bits and pieces.
You know who I want to see in there?
Who?
Wesley! Wesley Crusher, is that you?
Oh, yes, that would be good, wasn't it?
I wonder what rank he's up to now.
He'd be pretty smelly, I reckon.
Well, no, Willie Wheaton, Wesley Crusher became like an all ethereal being or some weird thing at some point in some episode, so he's a different Will Wheaton or Wesley Crusher that we remember from way back when. But yeah, you are right, though. If the show picks up, you never know who they're going to include, and it could end up being very successful, so good on them for doing it, yeah? Anything else you want to mention about good old Pilch? If anybody out there starts calling him Pilchard, you know where to start.
Blame this one.
Exactly, old Pilchard kid. So keep your eyes open for the show, and we will be back with you right after these messages with something very exciting to talk about.
Alternate Worlds has been specialising in comics and collectibles for over 40 years, with a back issue collection of over 500,000 comics covering the golden age right through to latest releases, including signed and slabbed gems. They also have an enormous graphic novel collection, one of the largest ranges of manga in the country, as well as toys, statues and pops, and new items are arriving every Wednesday. Each month, Alternate Worlds hosts its own premium comic day, where all the rare treasures are put on display for inspection and purchase. The store also runs regular tournaments and competitions for both comic and gaming fans. And for local and interstate and international buyers, the Alternate Worlds website features their complete range of products, so whether you come in online or in store, visit them soon.
Welcome back to the show. We've got something very, very interesting to talk about, something a little bit left field, definitely not a family show, but is certainly worthy of a discussion. I'm going to pass over to Claire to bring it up.
I wanted to talk about a show called Altered Carbon. It's on Netflix at the moment. Season 1 is already out and amazing. The idea is it's set in about 300 years in the future, and everyone has like a chip called a stack implanted in the back of their brain when they're about 1 year old, and it records everything. So it records everything about you, your personality, who you are, and it basically, in a way, becomes you. And that means that you're not necessarily stuck in your own body. You can be taken out and put into another body, or transferred. The data can be transferred into another body. But that also means that you don't have to die, because if your body dies, you yourself are still in that stack. And the story is a guy who is, he's an envoy, which is he was originally kind of like a special ops trained type guy, and he gets brought back to solve a murder 250 years in his future. So I find it fascinating. There are so many things about this show that ask a lot of questions. They don't necessarily answer all the questions, but the idea that you can be in any body, any time, any gender, any age, I find that quite fascinating.
There's actually a very good example. I think it was in the pilot episode where a young child had died, and they took what they call the stack. It's the chip that sits in the back of the head, and they put it in the body of an old lady. So suddenly the parents who used to have this 7-year-old kid have now got this old lady with the brain of a 7-year-old. And that gives you an example of how the system works.
It also gives you an example of how sort of government processing works, because the reason she ends up in that body is because that's what's available.
Yeah.
The government's required to provide her with a body, but there's no requirement to make it a 7-year-old child's body. It's just whatever's around. So, yeah, those sorts of things are quite interesting.
The philosophical element to it, which I found very intriguing, is that it's working on the view that if you're a rich person with an unlimited amount of money and you effectively have an unlimited lifespan, how crazy do you become? And it doesn't mean crazy in like loony bin stuff, but the fact that normal life doesn't satisfy you anymore. So you then decide to say, well, okay, what can I do that's really extreme, really wrong, because I can't satisfy my pleasures anymore, my desires. And for that reason, the society, for the rich and famous, can cater for that. And you do have to wonder that if a human being could live for 100 years or more, and in this case with the rich people, they clone their body so they can actually look and sound the same for that entire time. how would you treat the rest of humanity? And it deals with that on a very interesting level. This is where the violence comes into it. It's a very violent show. Now, funnily enough, we've got a family show sitting right here, but Altered Carbon, as I mentioned earlier, is definitely not a family show. So if you've got kids, don't let them watch it. It's really, really full on. But that's the most intriguing thing that I found, is saying, well, yeah, how do people change as the decades and even potentially the centuries progress?
Well, it is centuries. One of the main characters, Lawrence Bancroft, who is the guy that was murdered, the guy whose murder Takeshi Kovacs is brought back to solve. He's 360 years old at this point. He was one of the first ones to get the stack, and he was one of the first ones to be able to, keep cloning his body and keep moving on. And obviously he can select what age his body is, and you can do all sorts of things to the body. It can be genetically altered in any way, all those sorts of things. But it also brings up questions of family. He's got, I can't remember how many kids, but it's 20-something kids, and none of them are ever going to inherit. They're all just stuck waiting for Dad to decide what happens to them. And it asks the questions, and it talks about them a little bit, or deals with them a little bit, but there are so many that aren't ever really solved. And even the question of religion and how do you actually die? They talk about sleeve death, and the sleeve is the body, and real death, which is when your stack gets destroyed. So if you're religious and your body dies, does that mean you've died? And should you be able to come back in a new body or not? And that's actually critical to the story too, the way they deal with that. It's I don't know, I don't quite know what to think of that. Yeah,
it can sort of set your brain on edge sometimes. We have a married couple who fight to the death in a sport, for entertainment, and they fully accept the fact that they just change their bodies on a regular basis, and even their kids are used to them just coming home with a different sleeve.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, that's a bit on the bizarro side. So, yeah, it can definitely make you think a little bit. And of course, for this reason, blood sports are extremely popular, because there's no actual death. As long as you don't destroy the stack, the person just pulls out the chipsticks and the new one, and they're effectively good to go. So, on a production-related level, it's very Blade Runner-ish.
Yes.
There's definitely elements that look exactly like Blade Runner, with the whole urbanised city all at night time and a cramped sort of lifestyle. And there's actually a really good layout, because it's set in a place called Bay City, and you go, where the hell's Bay City? And they've actually built an entire city on the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. So whenever you see the city shots, they're actually on a bridge, because no one uses cars anymore. They're all flying around and all sort of business. So I reckon that's a very, very interesting concept, that they should do that. So the actual city's on the bridge itself, which is kind of groovy.
It's interesting. I noticed that it was on the bridge, and it didn't occur to me that they just weren't using cars.
Yeah.
I hadn't sort of realised that's part of why they've done that. That's interesting.
One of the more creepier aspects of it, and this is the kind of thing, some science fiction shows you think, oh, it'd be great if some elements became reality, and this one's definitely one where you don't want it to become reality, is the way of interrogating people, where they actually put them into a virtual world, and it's like being in a real world, but they can interrogate them, do whatever they want to them, and the real human being, the body, doesn't get damaged at all. So they can actually interrogate someone until they die, and then just repeat the process over and over and over again. That's one of the more nastier elements of this show. So if you've been on the squeamish side, you definitely want to look away from the screen for that one. There's also, it's becoming the common thing now. There's a lot of nudity in the program now, which for some people, what did you think about that? Because there was a lot more female than male nudity, but there was full frontal male nudity in it.
Yeah, there was. Because of the way the bodies are viewed, it kind of seems appropriate, because they're not viewed the same way we view our bodies, I think. They're a commodity. There's something that you can use, you can choose to have, you can choose to do what you want with, and if it gets damaged, you can throw it away. If you're rich enough, you can throw it away and get another one. And we keep talking about that. There's that divide between the rich and the not rich. For example, one of the main characters is a police officer, and she has a mortgage on her partner's sleeve, because he has been put on ice, so his stack is in storage, but his body, something has to happen with that. And if it just goes into the general sort of storage, then someone else ends up with it. So she's got to keep paying for the storage of that body until he comes out. So the way the bodies are used is quite different, and I think that some of the scenes in particular where there's quite a lot of nudity, that's why it can be like that, because they don't view their bodies the same way we do. it's just a different mentality and almost a different morality.
And it's genuine science fiction because it's set on all different planets,
Yep.
so it's not just all based on Earth. You don't really get a good sense of the spaceship travel. They are in different worlds as well.
Well, they
so-
don't travel by spaceship, that's the thing. When they cast from one world to another, they're actually sending themselves as data.
Okay.
So that's why there's none of the travel, the spaceship travel. Obviously, there would have had to be originally to get everything there and set up. But once you've got the receiving station on one planet and the sending station on another, you can travel from world to world almost immediately. Well, as quick as you
Yeah.
can send data, with no bodies to damage along the way.
So have a look. As I said, don't let the kids watch it. But there's only, I think, for the first season, 10 episodes.
That's
10 is
right.
always a great amount because you can binge watch it in a single day because there's no commercials, which is the way to go these days. Seriously, just start in the morning, press play, and off you go, and you'll have the whole season knocked over by dinner time. So, and I'm sure after watching Altered Carbon, dinner is the last thing you'd be thinking of having a nice big juicy meaty steak that's a bit on the rare side. So no, we won't be doing that at all. So, but it's definitely interesting, and of course they're now getting ready for their second season.
Well, they're
so
making second season already.
very cool. So
Quite looking forward to that. They're based on a series of books. So the first 10 episodes, the first season, is the first book. It's the whole story. It's not identical to the book, but it's that same story. So I'm hoping the next one will be based on the next book. And if it is, I'm looking forward to it. It'll be... One of the interesting things about it is, in a way, it's a little bit like Doctor Who. He doesn't have to have the same body. So he'll be... If it is the next book, he'll be on a different world, doing a different mission, in a different body.
Yeah. And the transformation is a lot easier than Doctor Who. You don't have to kill the guy. You just pull the
No,
stack
that's
out,
right.
stick it in the next sleeve, and you're ready to party. So
Yeah.
there you go. How good is that? Take a drink. What can I say? All right. Is there anything else you want to bring up about Altered Carbon?
No, just that I'm really looking forward to the next
Very good.
instalment.
Check it out. There you go. All right, that brings us actually to the end of the episode. Don't forget to subscribe to us if you haven't done so already. Click the bell for all the latest updates and reminders as to everything that's going on around the place. Next week, when we come back, we'll actually be going through the trivia quiz questions and bits and pieces that we discussed last time. It's very exciting stuff. What can I say? In the meantime, make sure you stay in the zone. Bye for now.